Viktor Frankl said, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms. To choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's way." This is Finding Human with Sue Jackson. Stay tuned for the next hour as Sue explores the human psyche, what makes us tick, and how to live better, more fulfilled and more meaningful lives. Only on 101.9 High FM.
Hello, this is Sue on the Finding Human program, and I'm sitting in the studio with Craig. I have a guest coming on from Israel, Liane Grunberg Wakabayashi, and she will be with us soon. We're just trying to connect. In the meantime, I would just like to dedicate this program to the International Holocaust Remembrance Day, which was yesterday, in memory of all the victims of the Holocaust and also the genocide that took place on the 7th of October 2023 in Israel. Hello, Liane, there you are.
Good morning. Hi.
Welcome. I'm looking at a very colorful woman, and you'll hear her story and you'll realize that she is actually a chameleon because she just fits in wherever she is. How are you today?
Thank you. I thought you said a comedian, but that's okay.
It can be both.
Yes.
The chameleon. Let me just introduce Liane. Liane is a very fascinating woman, actually, and I would like to thank Dr. Les Glassman for introducing us to each other. He did a marvelous interview with her. If you would like to pick it up, please go onto his website, Les Glassman, and it's on his YouTube. And Liane Grunberg Wakabayashi, have I pronounced it properly?
Perfect.
Oh,
Wakabayashi.
Oh, okay. So it's not with the I at the end. She's a a Haifa-based journalist. She's an artist, and she's you can get many of her articles on Jerusalem Post. She also wrote for the JAL In-Flight magazine. She wrote in the Japan Times. She is a writer. Just let me go back to it because I've got so much down here. She's a journalist, an artist, an art teacher, a writer, a creator of the Genesis cards, and she also assists people writing their memoirs, which she loves. She is a creator of these Genesis cards, and when I was looking her up, it said she's a founding director of the Genesis Art Academy. And art, she says, is a visualization. We have to get in touch with the intuitive sides of ourselves. You are many things. What would you most feel today that you are?
Oh my goodness, what do I feel that I am? I'm two sides of a coin. And I'm an artist on one side, a writer on the other. And what I realized about a coin is that you don't separate them. The two work together. And I could be a writer in the morning and an artist in the afternoon, or a writer 1 month and an artist another. It doesn't matter, but the two form my identity, and they have for quite a while.
And you know what I didn't say, and I think is very important, is that you are a mother. You are divorced from your husband in Japan, but you remain friends, which is
Yes.
marvelous on its own. And you brought out an incredible book. I tried to find it actually on Amazon. We are not connected to Amazon here. So we're just going to a quick break, and then I'm going to be back with you.
This is Finding Human with Sue Jackson. Only on 101.9 High FM.
Hello, this is Sue, and I'm back with my guest, Liane Grunberg Wakabayashi, and she's in Haifa. Bayashi. Okay, I thought I had to let the I go. You know, my grandson of 3 who lives in Israel said yesterday that Hashem is one. And then he stopped and he said to his mother, no, Hashem is 2. So his mom said, my daughter said, why? So he said, well, there's one Hashem here in Israel and one in Africa. So, Liane, we have got Hashem in Africa and in Israel. Isn't that lovely? Now, you know, your whole story, which you're going to be telling, I thought of a quote by Confucius, which said, wherever you go with all your heart. And you have definitely done that. Now, I would like you to go back to when you were 25 years old on your first trip to Japan.
Yes, sure. Okay, you'd like me to start there?
Mm-hmm.
My first trip to Japan, I went under the auspices of Columbia University Alumni Magazine. I was sent to write an article about the missing alumni from Japan, Fulbright scholars from the 1950s who'd come to Columbia, kind of as a compensation. They were from elite families. They'd lost the war. And so the American government said, well, we'll give you a good education, Ivy League education. It was fascinating. I was working at the business school at the time in public relations and writing as a kind of side gig while I was getting my master's in arts administration. So I was kind of juggling all these three things. And so this opportunity came up to go to Japan, interview these fascinating, wonderful people who seemed ancient to me because, oh my goodness, they were in their 60s, which is what I am now. And I found I was not walking so much into an exotic foreign situation, but actually going toward this feeling of family. I can't describe it any other way except to say that the warmth, the closeness, and the kind of genuine interest in befriending me was so strong that I wanted to go back as soon as I could. And I went with a couple of missions. One was to interview the alumni, and the other was to do research for a master's thesis on culture in department stores. And crazy as it sounds, Japan used to have blockbuster, fantastic exhibitions in their stores, better than any museum. In fact, they borrowed from the Vatican. They borrowed from the great museums of Europe, from America. And I was curious, how did this come about? Why is this happening? So I had a master's thesis I had to write as part of my Columbia graduation project, and I thought, hey, I'll do it in Japan. I'll go there and research it. And then the second trip 2 years later was I was sent by Condé Nast Traveler to write about this phenomenon, culture in the department stores. And so it was my trips to Japan were very connected to my writer's curiosity, thank goodness.
Mm-hmm. And you were coming from London. Just go back for a moment to your childhood. I know that your father was from Romania. Can you just fill in a little bit about where you came from?
Well, London is where my mother was born and raised. And a small town in Romania, Brăila, was where my father was born and raised. They met in Montreal, Canada. They married in London, but I was born in Montreal. And very soon after, I have no real memory of Canada because the family were leaving. They were leaving as refugees from communist Romania and making their way to New York. And so our family kind of regrouped, the Romanian side in New York City. And that's why I have this lovely New York accent that I can't shake, even though I've been out of New York for over 40 years.
And so you went back to Japan, and you had a life of 30 years in Japan. Is that right?
That's right.
And your two children were born there. So fill me in a bit about how you met your husband and who he was.
He was, his name is Akihiko Wakabayashi. He's a trained acupuncturist, shiatsu therapist, And he was working at a clinic that my Jewish Israeli French friend introduced me to. She said, "You got to go to this clinic. You're too stressed. You're working too hard. Your shoulders are too tense." And so I went for my own stretching and relaxation to this clinic. And he was one of the few there who spoke English, kind of English. And that was the start, that he was the interpreter for me into this healing modality, acupuncture, shiatsu, Chinese herbal medicine, all these things that I had no awareness of. And what really connected us was I was so interested in Eastern philosophy. I was so excited to understand how the spirituality worked through Taoism. Less so through Confucianism, because acupuncture, Eastern medicine is all based on the Tao. And little did I know it, only years later would I understand that Taoism is Torah. And that was the thrill, that I actually got into a Torah life years later with an introduction through Tao.
And you came from a conservative Jewish background, is that right?
Right, yes.
Was it important in your home growing up? Judaism?
It was important in a conservative way.
Which means? we have a very mixed audience. Fortunately, I have wonderful listeners, and they come from all different backgrounds. So fill us in about what conservative Judaism was in your home. Conservative
Judaism was not, first of all, what it wasn't. It wasn't orthodox. It wasn't following the 613 mitzvot and leading lives that were really connected to Torah. The New York Times was our Torah, if you know what I mean. That took precedence. And yet Jewish tradition was important in the home, lighting Shabbos candles, having a sit-down Shabbos meal. I wasn't allowed to sew on Shabbos, but we could go to movies and other things. There was just the sewer's clause in Torah that prohibited me from doing that. So my parents kind of made up their own rules as they went, because nobody else in the family was practicing really any form of Judaism that I was aware of. And so they were also, part of it was being new in America. They came in their 30s. They kind of landed on their feet, but they were looking for a way. Yes.
Amazing. We're going to get back to that.
This is Finding Human with Sue Jackson, only on 101.9 High FM.
Hello, this is Sue, and I'm back with Liane, Grunberg, Wakabayashi. If you would like to WhatsApp us, please do so on 061 895 1019, or if you're out of the country, it's +27 61 895 1019. Our topic actually is on God's payroll, because if you listen to Liane's story and how she embraces so much of God's payroll. You were telling me about your mom and your dad, but you do accredit your mom for your ability to fit in wherever you are, be adaptable.
Yes, she had this expression, wherever you are, that's where you make your home. And having moved first from London to Montreal and then Montreal to New York City, that was her modus operandi. That's how she did life and found joy in life, by really immersing herself in the world that she was in. And she had been an actress in London, and even though she wasn't professional, she was always in Jewish theater, at temple, synagogue theater, while I was growing up. And I saw that connecting was to society was very important in that way.
And in many ways, because of her, you also, as I say, adapted to your own life. We're going to now skip many years and get to Japan, back to Japan. All right, so you had already met your husband-to-be, and then did you go back to London?
Uh, I was never in London. I was from New York.
New York. Your accent, yes, New York.
The accent is the giveaway.
Okay.
So, just repeat. Sorry, I missed
that. You had met your husband because you had gone to the clinic and met him, and he showed you the healing ways that he was teaching. And then did you go back to New York?
Well, I was there for myself. I was already working. I was over a year in Japan working for the Japan Times. I found a lovely cottage that I was living in and had roommates there. So I was happy there. I was in Japan for myself, and he was the bonus.
And how did you start meeting his family and his friends? How did you start this relationship going that it became so deep eventually?
It's really a great scene for a comic movie, how we met, because his first date proposal was, do you want to come to, his pickup line was, do you want to come to my grandmother's funeral? You're a journalist. You'll find this fascinating.
Wow.
And it was the week that I was just starting a 5-day-a-week, the equivalent of Ulpan, Hebrew, Japanese immersion class, and I couldn't go. But then 3 weeks later, his grandfather died, and by that time we were engaged, and so I had to go to that funeral. And so I entered the family at a time of tremendous transition, the changing of the guard between the grandfather, who was very much a patriarch of his 5 sons and their wives and children, and the new patriarch, which was going to be Aki's parents, his father, the eldest son,
and your father-in-law,
and my father-in-law. Mm-hmm. They were just great to me, great people, a lot of fun to be with.
I did read in one of your articles that you said your father-in-law had been food deprived in World War II, but had an incredible attitude of, well, let's get on with it. Let's get on with life.
And he liked his food. You know, the food was very important to him, having the finest foods around, good restaurants. Yes, that often came with the territory of that food deprivation, how much it meant, and also feeding his guests, feeding people really nicely was a big part of it.
Was he ever bitter about the past, Japan's past in the war?
No, I didn't feel any bitterness because he was very proud of his father's achievements. The whole family is. His father was a self-educated mechanical engineer who invented the rice polishing machine in Japan. And at the end of his life, he released 100 or over 100 patents. He wanted it in the public domain. He felt that the technology was that important. So the family, the rise of this family came from these very humble beginnings. And so Aki's dad and the next brother, there were 5 brothers, the eldest 2 worked for the company, worked for the rice polishing machine company. And that was the focus, on rebuilding Japan. And so their contribution by making white rice accessible to the general population was a very important, a big deal. And God's sense of humor is that Aki and I met over brown rice, not eating refined rice, because white rice isn't healthy for us. And so it was just a kind of humorous way that I would enter the family. When I saw my first bowl of white rice, I didn't know, should I eat it? He's telling me not to eat it, and now his mother's serving it to me. What am I supposed to do?
And what was your relationship like with your mom-in-law?
I would, the word that comes up is synchronous. synchronized, that we had so many things in common. We were both creative people. We both loved culture. We both liked tea time and sitting with a good cup of Earl Grey. We had this tendency to buy the same food and bring it to the table. I lived in the same building for a couple of years, and so we lived separately, but we'd eat together. And I would often bring something to accompany dinner, and whatever I brought, she had brought it too. And the only, it could be eggs. It could be some kind of smoked salmon. It could be avocado. It could be strawberries. Whatever it was, there it was on the table. And the only thing I can now look back is that we were both cheap and we were both looking for bargains. So maybe that's why it worked out so well. But it really drew us closer because we were always laughing together.
How wonderful.
I remember mostly.
And I know that your grandparents, when you took Aki back to London, your grandparents said to him, well, Aki, we see Liane has crossed into your world. It's good of you to cross into ours now.
Yes, they were in their 90s. These are my British grandparents. And it was our honeymoon trip. It was very special. And he lived up to that. He didn't know, I didn't know that in a few years, well, actually we married in 91, in the year 2000, so 9 years later, 2 Chabad houses would open in Tokyo and completely change our lives, his life, my life, our family life. And he was ready for that because everything that he had learned through Taoism was in Torah. And it was for him a confirmation of his beliefs.
And so when the Chabad rabbis actually came to Tokyo, did they embrace Achi then?
They embraced everybody. They'd embrace a lamppost. They embraced everybody because and I'm talking mainly now about Rabbi Binyamin Edery and his wonderful wife Efrat, who were my primary go-to Chabad, but we did go to Rabbi Mendy Sudakevich and Hannah as well. They're wonderful too. But Aki really took a shining to Rabbi Binyamin Edery and saw in him a role model for how he wanted to behave as a family man, as a giver to society, as somebody who cared not only about the Jewish people, but about Japanese society. And I think that really impressed him, that he saw over and over again that the Shabbos table was filled with Japanese who really had nowhere to go, didn't have families in Tokyo or anywhere. And this was a warm, nice atmosphere for them to feel included and to pitch in, roll up their sleeves and help out.
And nobody ever tried to convert Achi then? Did they respect him for his knowledge?
Look, some people are inconvertible, whatever you want to call it. When you've got the eldest son of the eldest son of the eldest son, very committed to passing down his Buddhist, Shinto, Taoist traditions, and that includes maintaining the cemetery, the graveyard, according to Buddhist custom. It's not a simple decision, and he's that kind of very loyal to his
principled
family name. And it comes also with being a samurai, this idea, the samurai were the upholders of the tradition and very proud of who they are. So it wasn't a simple decision, and it did come up, but he decided no, that he needed to be true to himself, and I respect that.
Absolutely, so do I, really. And then you had your daughter. How long after you got married was your daughter born?
Too long. We were married in 91 and 97, so there were 6 years. I wanted a child right away, and it just wasn't happening. And this, in hindsight, I see, was another blessing from God, that it all unfolded according to the bigger picture, the bigger plan. So yes, she came in 97.
And your son, how long after that?
He was born in 2002. I was just a month short of 43.
Wow, is that so? And your daughter was called Shoshana Miriam, is that right?
Well, Shoshana in the book, we call her Shoshana, and we call my son Akiva, because I wanted to give them some privacy. There's some details in the book that really I wanted to respect, that her story one day will be her story for her to tell it, my son his, and mom's version is mom's version, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. And going on to your life there, did you have a lot of friends there? Did you? What sort of home life did you have?
My home life, it's so interesting that the way you're asking me to review it, because it's almost like looking at another person. So I have to go back into it and tell you, Sue, that my mission as a mother was very different than my mission in my pre-mom days, which then I was really obsessed with writing and journalism and editing. It was really up in my head. And then around the time I got pregnant, I became very artistic, very creative, and very prolific in art. And soon after, I was having exhibitions. But at the same time, I was really mindful that having had to wait so long to be a mother, this was my child's turn to be the center of my existence. So I was moving over to let my child and then my next child be at the center. And that meant that I was following their lead in whatever was necessary to raise the children in a wholesome, loving way. That was my mission. And I sacrificed my career, you could say sacrificed, because from that point on, I was really a stay-at-home mother, primarily because who else was going to give them a Jewish home, and who else was going to be English as a mother tongue? If I was working, that would not have happened. So being there when the kids came home from school, being there for their friends, and then more and more getting them into the art world by opening an art studio. And half the art studio was for me and half was for my kids. They had their own section of it, and they'd bring all their little friends and play. And this was, I shared my life really with the children for many, many years, and it was a joy to do that.
I read somewhere that a mother is the shock absorber in the family.
Interesting.
And it is, and if you think about what's happening now around the world and in Israel especially, with so many reservists called up into the IDF and so many women staying at home looking after the children, they are the shock absorbers at the moment.
We're the shock absorbers, and we're also the gatekeepers.
Absolutely.
And this was something that I was really aware of, that there were certain things that were beyond the red line for me that I just couldn't accept. And this became a source of contention, but also I would say pride, that I stuck to my moral guns, my beliefs, in order to give the children a more balanced identity, a sense that they were, yes, Japanese, but yes, Jewish, and from a very proud, long tradition that they needed to know about.
So it was a long, proud tradition on both sides that they had. How amazing.
It was, and what was really thrilling as we all grew together as a family was learning how much of Shintoism comes from Judaism, and how the imperial family themselves practice a kind of secret Judaism.
Good heavens.
There's a lot out about it. I write about it too in my memoir, and it's something that is ongoing and very, very big interest to Israelis now who go to Japan in hordes. There are now direct flights between Israel and Japan, and they're going to seek these signs of our common ancestry.
Oh, amazing, isn't that? And then, so you then moved to Israel. That must have been a very difficult decision to make, because did Achi come with you initially?
Not at all. Without giving it all away, because it's all in the Wagamama
We're going to be
Bride.
talking about your book in a minute.
Yeah, I want to say that my daughter had a very, very difficult teenage life in Japan, and I could see that Japan was crushing her. And I consulted with the rabbi and rebbitzin of Chabad, and over again, and it took many, many meetings, I understood that we had to try somewhere new. And even though I had no family, close family in Israel, I had this strong sense that we were meant to go there to be protected and everything would be okay. And so I went for a few weeks. And as you know, I called Aki from Israel and I said, guess what? I found an apartment. I'm staying.
What a decision. We're going to get back to that very difficult decision in a moment.
This is Finding Human with Sue Jackson, only on 101.9 High FM.
Hello, this is Sue, and I'm back with Liane Grunberg Wakabayashi from Haifa in Israel, and we're talking about her journey from Japan to Israel. And she went to Israel in order for her daughter to have an easier teenage years there and get some assistance. And she took the children with her. She phoned her husband. She said, I found a wonderful apartment. She was married to a wonderful Japanese man. And you phoned and you said, I've got an apartment. So did he come then? Did he come to Israel?
I said, you don't need to come, but bring the dog. So actually, he didn't want to come, but his mother did. His mother wanted to see what was happening, how Miriam was doing, how her daughter was doing. So she booked the ticket, told Aki he's got to go. He got the paperwork for the dog, and the three of them came about 3 months.
Was it a shiatsu dog?
A dachshund poodle, very cute, jet setter dog. So yeah, they came to check us out, see we were okay, see how we were doing, and we were all set. I didn't expect them to understand really what was going on, but to see that we were okay and to see that granddaughter and Miriam was doing fine was very, very important. And my son at that point had decided to come and do his high school education in Israel. So the two children were with me at that time. And that was a big deal as well. How was that going to affect his future, that he wasn't in Japan for his high school years and wouldn't be accepted into society if he was not in society? So that was a big, big worry for Aki. And the worry turned out to be, as Shakespeare would say, much ado about nothing, because he's now become a very successful tour agent, and he gives tours to Israelis in Hebrew.
In Japan?
In
Tokyo? Gosh.
Yes.
Oh, isn't it amazing how life works out?
It is, and he loves that connection to Israel. He's speaking Hebrew almost every day, and yet he's in Tokyo.
If you would want to actually join us in this conversation, or you have any questions, you can on 061 895 1019. If you'd like to read an article by Liane in the Jerusalem Post, have a look at her latest article, which came out, I think, in November. It's probably not the latest, but it's on an Israeli's life in Haifa under constant rocket fire. Very interesting article that you wrote there. Now, Liane, tell me a bit about your book that you've brought out, which is a memoir, and it's called The Wagamama Bride, and it's a Jewish family saga made in Japan. What decided you to write this book, your memoir?
Oh, in 2011, there was the great Tohoku earthquake. And at the same time, the diagnosis that my father-in-law had pancreatic cancer and had a short time to live. And my daughter had her first psychotic break. All those three happening at one time was such a blow. And I had to hold it all together because I still had this adorable little son as well to really nurture and make sure that everything's okay.
So you were the shock absorber again.
Yes, you could say that, and I've always found that writing is my place to go for solace, to work things out, to understand, to not open my big trap and speak things before I actually work them through. And this has taken many, many years, but this was a way to do it, by writing about our lives in a way of, and what I was thinking was I wanted to really write a tribute to my dear father-in-law and what he'd done to, just as a role model. And in the end, it became so much more than that, because sadly he passed away and many things happened in the family that I couldn't foresee. And it really became a book about values, about their family values, the Wakabayashi values, my values, how my values changed as I became more aware of Torah way of life, and how my children were leading me to make very tough decisions about what is a comfortable life, and is a comfortable life as important as a value-driven life. And in the end, I chose a value-driven life.
I'm sure you had to give up a lot to make those decisions. Liane, tell me about, so people can actually get this Wagamama Bride. You can get it through Amazon. You can get it through, what's the book center, the book in Israel that they can, Koren.
Pomerantz Books. And by ordering through me as well, Aki likes the book so much he actually printed his own inventory. So my ex-husband keeps a stash of 500 books on hand.
I see that he asked you for the PDF of it. But you can get it on goshenbooks.com.
Yes,
Amazon and Pomerantz Books. And if you want a signed copy, you can actually get hold of Liane herself, and you can find her on LinkedIn if you want to. Now, this book is, I'm sure you've had incredibly good feedback about it, have you?
Thank you. You know, I have had wonderful feedback, but it's also rubbed people the wrong way. There are people who've actually had a reaction, allergic reaction to it, which I take it as a good sign that it's meant to bring up uncomfortable issues. The issue of, what do you put first? Do you put a marriage first under any circumstance just to hold it together, or do you accept that values change as the years go on, and a marriage that lasts almost 30 years is a success in itself?
And so people actually spoken to you about it? Have they asked you about it? How do you know that you're rubbing people up the wrong way at times?
Well, you could read the reviews on Amazon or Goodreads, and some of them are a little bit snarky and not necessarily true and vague, but those are the ones that you can see people are on edge from something in the book that they probably are not dealing with in their own lives.
So it's pushing buttons.
It is pushing buttons. It certainly is.
So
Was that
from your
No.
sorry, what?
It was not my intention. My intention was simply to write my truth. That was
Well, I often think that our truth, if it doesn't press a few buttons, we're not actually telling the true story.
Yeah.
And I do feel that so often we are asked to be honest and authentic, even if people don't like it. Thank you, Craig.
This is Finding Human with Sue Jackson, only on 101.9 High FM.
Hello, our time is moving so quickly, and I'm back with Liane and Grunberg Wakabayashi, and I want to ask her if people would like to get hold of you, because you run the Genesis Art Academy, and I want you to tell me a bit about this. What are you actually teaching there, and also your Genesis cards?
Sure. In a nutshell, I'm teaching how people can become more creative through intuition, to trust intuition more. And intuition is basically a way of connecting the dots in our lives to the bigger picture. And so we do it through a deck of Genesis cards, 44 cards that I created, that are shuffled, and randomly you choose one and you put it under a sketch pad before you begin. And then you draw on a topic a prompt that I give.
So do you turn it the wrong way around so that they can't see what
they can't see? They can't see the card. And then after they finish, they turn it over, and lo and behold, there are connections. There are always connections. And when people see connections, they stop judging their art. They stop saying things like, "Oh, my sister is the artist in the family," or "This is so childish." Instead, it's like, "Wow, how could this be that this card is mirroring something in my art, and the card's name is energy, and what is that telling me about the energy in my picture and the energy I'm putting out through my creativity?" And that makes people curious to keep going as artists, keep developing themselves. And the more you work with intuition, the intuition is your greatest teacher for all kinds of skills as an artist. And I've been doing this now for 30 years, and it's always evolving. This is what's exciting for me and my students.
So how can, if people want to join your workshop, I see I've got here genesiscards.com. That's where they can pick those up. But how do they get hold of you? Do you want to give out a number that they can contact you?
It's on the contact information is on the website. And what I recommend is that to learn about the back history and what's going on now, substack.com/Liane Wakabayashi.
Substack.com. You know, my son-in-law will be very happy to hear you, because I'm also a writer, but not a published one. And he is pushing me. He keeps sending me little quotes and reminders to get my work published. Yes. And I keep giving him excuses. So he'll be very happy to hear that you're saying that intuitively, we actually do know what we need, but so often we block that channel, that intuitive channel that's saying, "Listen, please."
This is true, and I'd like to return to a theme that you and I share, which is Viktor Frankl's message of positivity, of adopting a worldview that everything's fine, that we're in control of our emotions and thoughts, even if we're not in control of what's going on around us. And so I can choose to love my art. Do you understand? I can choose to love my creativity and my writing. And it becomes a challenge when other people are sending us noise and criticizing it. But if I can have this strong base of positivity within me, which is what Judaism is about and Torah is about, and Taoism is about, then I'm not going to be fazed by what's going on. So I'm really giving people this foundation of like a raft of positivity in a world of creativity.
And on that note, we've got to close. I'm being told to wrap up. Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Makundi. Thank you, Vusi. And thank you, Liane. I have really enjoyed this time. We're going to have to get back together again. There's so much more to speak about. I want to hear about Miriam's kimono from your mother-in-law in Israel. There's so much to speak about still. Thank you so much for sharing this time with me. The podcast, if anyone would like to pick it up, will be out later under Chai FM, Sue Jackson, Finding Human. We're going to be ending with which is not going to come through on the podcast, but in honor of the International Holocaust Remembrance Day, we're going to be playing a song from the ashes from Abe Rutenberg. Thank you, Craig.